Okay, so now our next speaker is Mr. Yigal Unna. Mr. Yigal Unna is a significant figure in Israel's cybersecurity landscape, having served as the Director General of the Israel National Cyber Directorate, reporting directly to the Prime Minister. Prior to this role, he was the founding Chief Executive Director of the Technology Cyber Unit in the National Cyber Bureau. Mr. Unna also brings extensive experience with the Shabak, ultimately serving as the head of the Cyber and Signet Operations Division with a rank equivalent to a Major General. Lastly, Mr. Unna is currently a fellow at ICT at Reichman University. I fondly remember the field trip that we took to your headquarters with ICT, how hospitable you were, and what a genius we found you to be. The floor is yours.
Thank you. The brave that hang on until now. So, good afternoon. And the most important title is the last one that you mentioned, a fellow member in the ICT in Reichman University. Now, as a private citizen, you look at a survival of 4 years as a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer of the State of Israel, and it's not something that comes easy, and we'll talk about it. So, when I was walking down the aisle over here at the Chase Auditorium, there's a nice stand with all the flags of countries participating, and maybe more. And I look at them, and in fact, almost all of them, I recognized countries that suffered from cyber attacks even recently. So, short intro to what we're going to talk about. Well, Montenegro. They attribute to Russia. Russia, surprisingly, is denying. They don't know what this cyber is all about. But they suffer. It's a small country in the Balkans, and they're mostly, until now, crippled with the cyber attacks. Not far away, I think they have, in fact, a common border. Albania. Albania is a NATO member. And last year, July last year, they suffered a massive cyber attack attributed to Iran. Yes, we discovered that Iran is harassing not just Israel, but also other Muslim countries, surprising. And the big issue here is, this is the first time, if you don't familiar with, that diplomatic relations were cut off because of cyber attack. And closing embassies immediately in Tehran and in Tirana, attributing directly to Iran in this case. And as a NATO member, calling to invoke Article 5 of NATO Pact, which is a big issue, significant issue, because once it's invoked, well, all the other countries, US, UK, Germany, you know, all the big fellows, should come over and help. That's one of the reasons that Ukraine wanted to join NATO. Maybe still, I don't know. So, Albania. Another flag, Poland. They suffer massive DDoS, denial of service attacks, that crippled down. And remember, Poland became one of the, I think, the top 10 economies of the world. And they're hit. I was in Warsaw 2 months ago in a big cyber event, and they feel the heat, also the cyber heat coming from south, from Ukrainian frontier. Going to India last December, a big event. By the way, they have many events that don't come to the press, not there and not in the West, but it's a kind of a test bed or playground for Chinese, that's what they say, Chinese attacks. Probably not official Chinese groups, but like in the Russian case and like the Iranian case, we see more and more phenomena of state-sponsored, literally, of cyber groups that do daily cybercrime business. Not engaged with the government or anything like that, but oriented to Iran, Russia, China, whoever. And they developed a business model that the countries, the states, come into them and say, okay, hit those targets for impact, and we'll discuss what are the targets that are most impactful. Whatever money you can get, it's yours, but make sure that you achieve the KPI, the indexes, the results that the country wants from you. And it works also in the Israel case. So this is India. And as we speak about influence campaigns, and that brings us more and more to terror. Well, we see the classic example is, in fact, a positive, for the Israeli eyes, of course, example, but very distinguished, something that we need to learn from. This is the Evin prison in Iran, in Tehran. Notorious prison that holds all the political prisoners, journalists, etc., not a democracy or democratic regime. And suddenly, 2 years ago, you see in the control room, all the screens turn into slogans. Somebody hacked into the system, and instead of seeing what's going on in the prison, you see there Iran for Iranians, or stop the atrocities, etc. Immediately followed by this, by a leakage, massive leakage of videos showing the atrocities, probably collected months earlier, of what's going on in the prison, out there in the internet. Well, that brought an impact. So whoever did that, if to quote the slogans, the Iranian opposition, didn't look for money, didn't look for intelligence, nothing classified there, didn't look to cause damage, because they didn't cause any damage, no infliction of damage. So only hacking for other reasons, influence reasons. And in this case, it helped. It was successful because the regime needed to react, needed to apologize, needed to promise reforms. I'm not sure if they've done. Probably I wouldn't lose any sleep hours over that. But we see, 2 years ago, it was one of the triggers of the riots and instability in Iran, because people there, they don't like to see in their eyes suddenly the proof of what they heard or suspected or, assumed. Unfortunately, this is the only positive case I can show you. We suffer for more and more a tsunami of cyber attacks. We have other attacks as well, but no cyber. These are the cyber attacks. For example, the North Macedonian voting elections seized or halted for many, many hours, holding a shadow over all the process, rigging it or something like that, because of cyber attack. In Ecuador, a couple of months ago, voters, they allow outside expatriates, Ecuadorian expatriates to vote. They couldn't because of glitches or cyber attack that prevent them from doing that. And looking at the headline, hit by earthquake and cyber attacks. Well, earthquake is nothing to do with people. Cyber attack is certainly not a natural phenomenon. So we see more and more the most critical infrastructure that I mean open, liberal, democratic societies, need to defend is democracy. But the problem, and I was responsible for 4 years, even more, but as Director General, to protect Israel critical infrastructure. By the way, zero, meaning 100% success, zero attacks succeeded over, and believe me, there are not daily, hourly attempts over that. But it's much easier to define exactly where is the electricity generated, or where the water comes from, or where the money in the central bank should be secured. You set a perimeter, you can defend it. How you can exactly defend democracy? Where are the machines of democracy? And I hold a personal Guinness Book of Records of securing 4 elections in 2 years, unfortunately, in Israel. The 5th one, I was already happy in ICT fellowship. But before that, we needed to adjust every time. And what Israel experienced, I assure you, all election campaigns around the world are suffering or bound to suffer from the same and growing attacks. And this is the story of the current cyber pandemic. Unlike the COVID that, knock on wood, seems to pretty much go away, well, this pandemic is here to stay or even to grow worse. And we see intentions of the attackers to undermine people's trust in political democratic systems, in financial systems, which they're all based on psychology, let's admit. There's nothing there but zero and ones in big machines, IT, computers, that we attribute economic importance to it. It's all in our minds. Governance, healthcare, everything is bound to being undermined. And we are much more vulnerable because we are more digitalized and getting more digitalized. I work today for many governments around the globe, third world countries, as we say, that get the boost, get the big jump to become members of the digital world. And it's a great thing, but it comes with a lot of dangers. And second, we are more dependent on public opinion than the other side. Other side is not just, terror groups. It can be rogue countries. You can mention North Korea, Iran, and some others. And even individuals, and of course, superpowers. I can name two. In fact, I've done that. So this is the world that we're living. And above all, we see that the still ongoing conflict in Europe, Russia, Ukraine. We talk a lot, and rightfully, about the atrocities and the horrible things that happened there. But there's also a cybernetic side. This is the hybrid war era. And when we say cybernetic, yes, also with influence campaigns. And this is, unfortunately, the starting point of any future conflict. May it be Taiwan, China, may it be Israel, Iran, probably Israel something. But everybody in the world, in the hacking world, is looking at it and saying, okay, it's done, so it's okay. Let's, like in poker, raise the stakes, raise the wagers. If we take a look at the financial aspect and what is the fuel that goes into this economy or this industry, it's enormous fundings. It's in trillions of dollars. You see different estimations, they all show the same numbers more or less and the same tendency. And if we take a look at the global rise of costs, inflations, well, companies are still reporting the same level of margins and markups. They are not getting more greedy or less greedy. So where all this inflation comes from? Partly, growing part, as more and more researchers show, and it's hard to get it because corporates are reluctant to report about their shameful cyber attacks, comes from that, because somebody needs to pay these amounts of crypto, trillions of dollars, and at the end, it's us, the customers. So, from all kinds of directions, and bear in mind that the biggest problem is still there. Well, look, people are killing each other for billions of years. That's our nature, unfortunately. But we're used to a symmetry or to equation that a simple weapon, sword and arrow, can cause a minor damage. If you want to cause huge damage like that, well, you need to hold sophisticated weapons. You need physicists, you need chemists, engineers, and as you know, Israel is working very hard to keep that only very few countries will hold these capabilities. But those countries are more restrained. They have, some playing rules. The problem is when the cyber arrives. Because the cyber, I don't have a keyboard here, but imagine, all that you need for cyber weapon is on a keyboard and a computer. Numbers, symbols, letters, a processor, internet connectivity, and knowledge. Knowledge, you don't need to be NSA because everything is leaked. So you can also learn. Many kids, one of mine, are studying it by themselves. Curiosity, nice, hobby. But you can find horrible things there and become a great hacker by yourself. The problem is this simplest weapon can cause 10 times more than Hiroshima. They can melt down nuclear power plant. They can drop airplanes from the sky. And we are not used yet for this asymmetry. We, governments, international organizations, UN, everybody. And how do they get that? Well, they're hit by cyber weapons. Remember Stuxnet hit Iran 13 years ago, crippled their centrifuges enriching uranium for a year or two. They recovered, took the code, reversed it, and began to shoot Siemens controllers all around the world, including Israel. Secondly, it leaks massively because of righteous people, because of money, because of everything. And it's too easy to get all the NSA arsenal over a small SD card with enough room for some TV Netflix series. Also, that's easy. So why not for terrorists to try that? So we see a new world of David and Goliath, but we are the Goliath. Lazy, heavy, still looking for tanks and old methods, while the Davids are malicious Davids. And they don't need all that. Hamas, Hezbollah, they don't need any F-35 or submarines because they have this in their hands. Well, Israel is the most targeted, cyber-targeted countries in the world. That's not a secret. We have many, many numbers and angles that showing that. And to end, I can elaborate more of how Israel is trying or handling the cyber terror. Well, basically, you can see some of the examples. Yes, beside all of the traditional, professional, I'm a cyber guy, but we never forget that behind the cyber thing, it's not a technology, it's not computers. They're using technology and computers, but it's people. And those people, since Shomer Chomot, since the Gaza operation 2 years ago, it's out there. It began even earlier, but it's out there that they are a legitimate, also legally, with the international law. They are legitimate targets for military targets. So, yes, we took down the head of the cyber Hamas, and we took down some of the hackers, and it sends a clear message. And I point it here because we need to understand in this world, yes, it's not two different parallel universes. It's the same arena. It's a hybrid war era that we need to fight it with all the tools that we have, all the ideas that we have, methodology that we have, and with all the enthusiasm, and not to separate it, because if we don't stop them now, we're gonna suffer much, much more later. Thank you very much.